So there are two types of movements in small intestine, okay. Now the most important point you need to understand is this: in small intestine, the most important thing is this: in small intestine, both these movements are intermingled in such a way that you cannot distinguish that which one is the segmentation movement or mixing movement and which one is the propulsive one. Clear? Now a very important part here we need to understand is this. Now listen, small intestinal movements are also divided on the basis of whether food is present or not. Now a very important point here we need to understand is this, that whenever we are talking about small intestinal movement, the first point we need to understand and remember is this, that we will have to study this motility of small intestine with respect to whether food is present in the small intestine or not. Okay, if food is present in the small intestine, then motility patterns of small intestine changes, and if food is absent in the small intestine, then the motility pattern actually is changed. Now listen with all your attention. Whenever food is absent, suppose whenever food is absent, when in the small intestine, when food is absent, the motility of small intestine is different. Okay, now suppose this is a part of the small intestine. Okay, now when there is no food in the small intestine, suppose this is a segment of small intestine. Okay, now when there is no food in the small intestine, what happens is this is very interesting, you must understand right now in details, that when the food is absent, then automatically what happens is this: suppose this is the layer of your GI. Okay, now this is the serous layer. Okay, and suppose this is your muscular layer. Okay, you already know that there are actually two layers of muscles, smooth muscle, right? Now listen, this is longitudinal layer. Okay, this is longitudinal layer, and this is circular layer. This is circular layer. Now you all know that this is the serous layer, this black one is the serous layer, right? This black one, the serous layer, and this is muscularis layer. Okay, muscularis layer. Now this is what, now listen with all your attention, this is what, this is nothing but this is nothing but the mucus layer, right? This is nothing but your mucus layer. Now listen with all your attention possible. This is your mucus layer. Now suppose this is the mucus layer. Okay, this is suppose the mucus layer. Now listen, in the mucus layer, there are certain cells which are called endocrinocytes. Okay, endocrinocytes. Okay, these are called endocrinocytes. Okay, now listen with all your attention. These endocrinocytes are actually specialized cells. These endocrinocytes are actually specialized cells which secrete a special hormone, which secretes a special hormone called, it is known by the name of motilin or motilin. Okay, it is known by the name of this special name called motilin. Okay, when this motilin is released, into the blood vessel, when this motilin is released into the blood vessel, when it comes into the blood vessel, then what happens is this, that is, suppose there are some blood vessels. Okay, now when motilin is released into the blood vessel, then these motilins, suppose this is your submucous layer. Okay, now this motilin will activate these muscle layers. This motilin will activate these muscle layers. Okay, when this motilin will activate this muscle layer, then contractions, okay, then almost weak but not that much also weak contraction will occur, and these contraction will continue like a ring. These contractions will continue like a ring up to the end of the small intestine. They will continue as a ring. So this is oral surface, oral, and this is aboral surface. That means these motilins, this hormone motilin, what it does is, this motilin actually helps in contraction of the smooth muscle layers. Okay, contraction of the smooth muscle layers, and due to the alternative contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscle, what happens is this, that a ring of peristaltic movement occurs when the small intestine is empty, that is, there is no food. Then this motilin comes into action. Now listen with all your attention. This wave of peristaltic like movements, is known by the name of MMC. MMC. Now what is the full form of this MMC? MMC stands for migrating myoelectric complex. Migrating myoelectric complex. Okay, this MMC stands for migrating myoelectric complex. Okay, now a very important point you need to understand is this, that when we take food, then these MMCs disappear. Why? There is a reason for it. Because when we take food, then motilin actually disappears, and therefore MMC also disappears. Clear? Then when we take in food, these MMCs are replaced by proper peristaltic movements. Clear? Which are controlled by Auerbach's plexus. Clear? If you don't know what is Auerbach's plexus, no problem. You just go to that video where I have discussed, that is the part 1 of GI tract motility. You will understand. Okay? Clear? So what is migrating myoelectric complex or MMC? Now these MMCs are contractile movements, okay, contractile movements which occurs at 100 to 120 contractions per minute. And now a very important point you need to understand is this, these MMCs or migrating myoelectric complex actually occurs almost after 100 minutes. That means suppose after 100 minutes, that means in an interval of 200 minutes, there will be what? Only one MMC if there is no food. Now, what is the importance of migrating myoelectric complex? What is the importance of this migrating myoelectric complex? The importance of this migrating myoelectric complex. Now, the importance of this migrating myoelectric complex is this, that it sweeps the additional food sweeps away additional food into the other parts of the small intestine or large intestine. Now listen, actually now important point you need to understand is this: migrating myoelectric complex actually originates, now listen with all your attention, migrating myoelectric complex originates in the stomach. MMCs originate in the stomach. A very, very important point you need to understand. It originates in the stomach. That is, you should understand that what is the role of motility in stomach motility. Clear? That means when the stomach is, when there is no food in the stomach, when stomach is empty, then motility will do its function, will perform its function. It will regenerate, or sorry, that will regenerate, whatever it is. That is, it will regenerate or generate migrating myoelectric complex. Okay, clear? Motility is actually made up of 22 amino acids. Okay, and motility is secreted at an interval of 100 minutes. Okay, clear? Now we will be talking about segmentation in details. Now listen with all your attention. Segmentation comes into action only when there is food in the small intestine. Okay, that means appearance of segmentation, or production of segmentation movements or mixing movements means that the food has actually arrived in the small intestine and migrating myoelectric complex or MMCs have died. Okay, now listen with all your attention. What is segmentation? Now let me draw a figure so that you can understand what is MMC. Sorry, what is segmentation. Now what happens in segmentation is this, that now listen, you already know that what is the rule of or law of gut, right? You already know what is law of gut. Now according to law of gut, what will happen? This portion, suppose this is the food, right? This is the food particle. Now this portion will have to what? Relax. Suppose this is the aboral surface and this is the oral surface. Okay, now this portion will have to relax and this portion will contract, right? Now listen, what happens is this: in case of segmentation, what happens is this: these food particles are segmented into smaller food particles so that it aids in digestion and absorption. Okay, how? Now follow the next diagram, please. Okay, follow the next diagram, please. These diagrams are present in your book, but you have not actually understood because you have not followed the diagram properly. Now listen. How I am drawing the diagram, I will tell you later, don't worry. Now what happens during segmentation is this. Now let me first tell you how I have drawn this diagram. What are the principles? Now listen with all your attention. What I have maintained while drawing the diagram is this. I have drawn this thing, you know how, but while drawing this second half, what I have drawn, what I have understood is this. What I have actually, you know, memorized is this. This is the, you know, these are the peak points, right? These are the peak points of segmentation in the first diagram. This is the first diagram, right? This is the second diagram. In this diagram, what happens is this particular portion where there was the peak, this portion actually, you know, contracts. These portions actually contracts. These portions will now contract. You know, in a wave, there are crest and troughs, right? There are crest and troughs. So, you know, in a wave, this is what? Crest, right? And in this wave, this is what? Trough, right? Now listen with all your attention. In the segmentation, what happens is this: when there was a crest, in the next diagram, this becomes a trough. That's it. Clear? That means this was in the first diagram, this was the peak of what? This was the peak of crest, but in the next diagram, this is actually the trough. Okay? Now, when this happens, what happens is this, that when this, you know, highest points of crest comes together, then these food particles will now be, you know, what? Torn into pieces. That's why they are crying. Okay? Now, what happens is this, that these big bolas of food are now being broken down into small pieces. And this process helps in digestion of food. This process helps in digestion of food. Clear? Clear? So, this is the segmentation, you know, movement of small intestine. Now, listen. If you want to learn propulsive movement, just understand, propulsive movement is nothing but the function of vagus nerve and orbex plexus. And whenever orbex plexus, or what is the other name of, you know, orbex plexus? The other name of orbex plexus is myenteric plexus, right? So the peristaltic movement, or the, you know, propulsive movement of small intestine is actually the result of vagus nerve and orbex or myenteric plexus. Okay? And if you want to learn how orbex and myenteric plexus learn, go to the enteric nervous system section. You will understand the same mechanism applies to the, you know, propulsive mechanism of small intestine. Okay? So this was the, you know, small intestinal motility. Next we will be talking about the large intestinal motility. Now the discussion of large intestinal motility starts from this. Now suppose this is your, you know, small intestinal end. Okay, this is the end of ileum. Now listen with all your attention. Suppose this is your starting point of, you know, okay. So now listen with all your attention. So suppose this is your, you know, large intestine. Now listen. At first we'll start with this entrance, okay, entrance of ileum or small intestine into the, you know, large intestine. That is the contact point. Now this contact point is also, you know, connected by a spring. Okay. Now these are actually not springs. What are these? Sphincters, right? Now this sphincter is known by the name of ileocecal sphincter. This is known by the name of ileocecal sphincter. Okay. Now listen with all your attention. So this is our ileocecal sphincter. Now important point here we need to understand is this, that suppose this is our what, large intestine. Now listen, I will be putting some fine minute details with respect to this diagram. Okay, now listen with all your attention. What is this? What is this area? This is what? This is our what, rectum? Oh my god. Now listen, this is our vermiform appendix, or simply appendix. Okay, vermiform appendix. Okay, or simply appendix. Now what happens is this, that during the entry of food, or kind, specifically not food, during the entry of food, if some particles enter here, okay, there are some special mechanisms by which actually food never enters here. Now if some food particles accidentally enters here, and if it remains there for a long time, then gastrointestinal system actually is loaded with GIT microbiota, okay, or bacteria. Now if some food particles will enter here, then microbes will attack this food particle and therefore will ferment and therefore will live on that particular food particle, and therefore what happens is this, an inflammation occurs here, and this is called appendicitis. Okay, and therefore we need, this is a simplest explanation of appendicitis. Obviously the appendicitis itself is a very much important gastric disorder. Now so this is your vermiform appendix or appendix. Okay, now listen with all your attention. An important point here we need to understand, okay, that is, there are three consecutive bands of smooth muscle fibers like this, which extend like this. Okay, which extends like this. Okay, which extends like this. Now listen, what are these? Now listen, these bands of smooth muscles, they are known by the name of tinea coli or coli, tinea coli. Okay, these three bands of smooth muscle fibers are called tinea coli. Clear? Now a very important part here we need to understand right now is this, that this is called this area is actually called cecum. Okay, clear? This is called cecum. Okay, this is called cecum. Now a very important part is this, that this and these parts are actually called colons. These are called colon. Okay, now listen, this is called ascending colon. Clear? This is called ascending colon. This is called transverse colon. Okay, and this is called descending colon. Okay, this is called ascending colon, this is transverse colon, and this is descending colon. Clear? Now listen with all your attention. This part, this notch like portion, this notch like portion is known by the name of sigmoid colon. sigmoid colon. Okay, this is known by the name of sigmoid colon. Clear? Now listen, the sigmoid colon actually opens in a space, okay, this is called rectum. Clear? And this rectum opens in an orifice like space which is called anal or anus. Okay, not anal, thank God. Okay, clear? So this is the naming of large intestinal parts. Now a very important point to understand here is this, that whenever suppose this is your food or chyme, okay, suppose this is food particle which is about to enter the large intestine. Now what happens is this, whenever, now listen, can you people tell me that large intestinal motility starts when? Now listen, I am giving you three options. Listen, when the food is in esophagus. Now listen, okay, wait, I am giving you examples of this. Now listen, suppose I am giving you examples, okay. Okay, now listen, now I am giving you three examples. When the food particle is here, that is in the esophagus, then your large intestinal motility will start. Or there is another option, that is when the food is in the stomach, then your large intestinal motility will start. And the third one is when the food is just near the ileocecal sphincter, then large intestinal motility will start. What is your opinion? Now listen with all your attention. Whatever you see, I will actually think that you are guessing. Why? Because listen, whenever your food reaches the stomach, okay, large intestinal motility starts. Clear? Whenever your food reaches stomach, large intestinal motility will start. Clear? Very, very important point you need to understand that. Whenever your food reaches your stomach, okay, then large intestinal motility will start. Clear? Now listen with all your attention possible. Like small intestine, the large intestinal motility also has three components. Like small intestine, the large intestinal motility also has three components. Clear? Number one, segmentation. Number two, propulsive movements. Okay. Now the third one is unique to large intestine. Actually there are two movements, right? In case of small intestinal motility, there were two movements, segmentation and propulsive. When food is there, when in absence of food, there are migrating myoelectric complex, right, which provides slow waves. Okay, now listen. In case of large intestinal motility, there is a third type of movement which is called mass movement. Okay. Now listen with all your attention possible on this earth. This mass movement is actually not so much frequent in large intestine. Clear? This mass movement actually occurs. Now listen. This mass movement actually occurs when there is large amount of food or there may be no food. Okay, that means mass movement is actually, the real cause of mass movement is actually undetermined, but some people say that due to CCK mass movements may occur. Okay, clear? Now listen with all your attention. Mass movements are not that much frequent in large intestine. Okay, that means in a day 5 to 6 times you will see these large movements, so it is not that much frequent. Okay, now we will describe important things right now. Okay, now listen. What are the functions of these strands of smooth muscle which are called what? Tenia coli. What is the use of these strands of smooth muscle? Now listen, what happens during smooth muscle large intestinal motility is this. Now listen, during large intestinal motility, suppose this is a part of large intestine, okay? This is the part of your large intestine, suppose, okay? This is a part of your large intestine. Now what happens during large intestinal motility is this, that peculiar type of contractile patterns appear. Why it is called peculiar, now you will understand. Why it is called peculiar, now listen. Clear? Now, in large intestinal motility, these type of movements can be seen. Okay? In large intestinal motility, these type of movements can be seen. And they are actually not at all segmental movements, they are not propulsive, they are not mass movements. But they are actually saculations. Okay? They are actually saculations. Okay? They are actually saculations. Okay? What do you mean by saculations? Saculations means sac-like, okay? Sac-like, okay? That means these, when chyme enters the large intestine, what happens is this: these muscle movements occur in so much with a frequency, so that these muscles become sac-like, and food particles are present here. Okay, clear? That means they form saculations or sac-like movements. Okay, that means the food particles are converted into small fragments of food paste, which are present in different sacs. Okay, why small intestine is doing this? Because small intestine absorbs vigorously water and other ions. Clear? Okay, now listen, what happens is this. Now this saculations or sac-like movement of large intestine is called hostra. Clear? So what is hostra? Hostra are sacculation-like movements of large intestine. Clear? It's called hostra. Okay. Now listen with all your attention possible. Now a very important part here we need to understand is this, that why do we need Taenia coli? Because we need Taenia coli because suppose there is a food particle here. Suppose there is a food bolus or chyme here. Okay. Suppose there is a chyme here. Now to propel the chyme into this part, what will happen is this. Now listen, this food particle is going against the gravity. That means powerful contraction should occur so that this particle can move against the gravity. So then comes Taenia coli. What happens is this: Taenia coli actually contracts and pushes this food particle here. And then what happens? This transverse colon Taenia coli actually contracts and pushes this food particle which was present here, here. And then this contracts and pushes this here, and it ultimately reaches here. Now listen, what is the basic difference between the food particle or chyme present here, here, here and here? Now suppose I am drawing site number 1, site number 2, site number 3, site number 4, site number 5, site number 6, site number 7. Now what happens is this. Now listen, in site number 1 you must understand this. There is a hardcore difference between site number 1 and site number 7. What is that? In site number 1 the food is actually fluid like. The bolus is actually fluid like, it contains fluid, but when it comes to site number 7 it has become hard. Okay, that is what your defecation products. Okay, now that means going from site number 1 to site number 7, what actually gets absorbed is water. Clear? What actually gets absorbed is water. Clear? Now an important point about anus is this, that okay, let me draw the anus here. Okay, let me draw the anus here. Now listen, a very important. Okay, now let me draw the anus again so that I can make you all understand. Okay, suppose this is your anus. Okay, now what happens is this: in an anus actually there are internal anal sphincter as well as external anal sphincter. Now how to draw? Now listen, It's a very vague diagram, but please, this is, I am drawing this for you only, for you, so that you can understand. Actually, this is not the right way to draw it, okay? So this is what the springs are stretched into the external part. That means what? This is external anal sphincter, right? This is what? External anal sphincter. External anal sphincter. Well, laughing with respect to the word, when I'm uttering the words anal. Oh, you're laughing at the sphincter word. Great. You will become a good person in life. Now this is what? This is what? Internal anal sphincter, okay? This is external anal sphincter, this is internal anal sphincter, okay? Now a very important point you need to understand is this, that the internal anal sphincter, this internal anal sphincter is made up of smooth muscle. Is made up of smooth muscle. Clear? But this external one is made up of skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle. Clear? Now a very important point here you need to understand is this, that this internal anal sphincter is actually controlled by nerves like enteric nervous system and all, but this external anal sphincter is controlled by a nerve called pudendal nerve or pudendal nerve. Okay, is controlled by, that is, okay, external anal sphincter, external anal sphincter is controlled by what? Pudendal nerve. Clear? Pudendal nerve. Clear? So that is the basic difference between external anal sphincter and internal anal sphincter. Clear? Okay. Now we will be talking about two reflexes in short. Okay. One is gastrocolic reflex, another is orthocolic reflex. Now what is gastrocolic reflex? Now I have already told you that whenever food is present in your stomach, then your large intestinal motility will start, right? This is called gastrocolic reflex. That means due to gastric filling, colic movements or your large intestinal movement will start. Clear? Now what is orthocolic movements? Okay, now listen. Due to stomach filling, okay, large intestine movements, this is called gastrocolic reflex. Clear? This is gastrocolic reflex. Okay. Now whenever we will discuss that, suppose early in the morning you woke up from the bed and you think that pressure is increasing in the area which should not be discussed right now. Okay. Right? What is that? That is nothing but orthocolic reflex. Okay. That is orthocolic reflex. Orthocolic reflex. That means orthocolic reflex actually occurs. Orthocolic reflex actually occurs due to the fact that when you stand against the gravity, then muscles of muscles of external and internal anal sphincter actually loosen, and therefore orthocolic reflex occurs. Okay. But when you take in food and this food enters the stomach, this leads to large intestinal movements, and this is called gastrocolic reflex. Okay. Clear? Obviously we will talk about this in details in later videos and later classes, obviously. Clear? So right now